Good morning. Welcome to RSBN Live Desk. My name is Robert McNeely. We are excited to be with you here on this beautiful, it is now Tuesday, July 15th. And 1 year ago this week, the Republican National Convention, just hours after President Trump was saved by God, an assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, that claimed the life of Corey Campitor, a hero firefighter who was shielding his family at the time. And there should never be violence when you engage in the political process in any way, shape, or form, especially for those simply attending a political speech or rally. And I'm sure House leadership will talk about that as they were building on those discussions just yesterday in the House, and the great Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia stating that she is perhaps one of those congresswomen that's had the most threats of all. And we still have in regular leadership and even with regular membership of the House and the Congress, there's really not a security apparatus like you have with the president, the vice president, the first family, second family, when it comes to Secret Service. So perhaps more of that discussion taking place within leadership ranks in the coming days and hours regarding keeping our lawmakers safe, as they should be, regardless of ideology. And in turn, the temperature, the heat should come down. We've had situations where demon rats have gone out there saying that the Republicans want to kill Granny or shove them off the cliff. You remember even during the Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan rhino days of 2012, where it showed the former senator and governor of Utah and Massachusetts literally wheeling Granny off of a cliff. Same with Paul Ryan, who became the House Speaker. That kind of leverage and false entertainment really puts people in the crosshairs, literally, as we saw with our fantastic president. It should never happen, and people in leadership should have that mindset and mentality to protect everyone they're serving with, and to do it being disagreeable without being disagreeable. Dialoguing and debating policy and facts. That's the way it should be. And actually, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, one of his last great speeches on the Senate floor before becoming the Secretary of State, had to do with just this, that the United States Senate, the greatest body in world history to dialogue and debate the issues of the day, and you can do that without being against one another and still wishing the other well. So as President Trump and House GOP leadership move forward after the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that became law on the 4th of July, we'll see what leadership has to say on a number of different topics. Their briefing beginning at the top of the hour. President Trump continues to deliver on the Make America Healthy Again agenda, thanks to Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy, as well as countless members in his cabinet. This push has taken a promise to confront the chronic health crisis plaguing Americans, and now 6 months into the new administration, President Trump is delivering on that promise by removing harmful chemicals from our food supply. Something very different than other countries, different than other continents as well. And if you recall, when Secretary Kennedy was running for the presidency as a Democrat, his party pushed him away and he became an independent. He revealed that story on the campaign trail after endorsing President Trump, that he prayed on his knees to God for 19 years, bring me that person that will help me with this movement. And he said in Wisconsin and Arizona and countless swing states, God brought me President Trump. Now, the administration announced that dozens of ice cream companies representing more than 90% of the ice cream volume sold in the United States have pledged to eliminate the use of certified artificial colors in their ice cream and frozen dairy products. That should be applauded as they join a growing group of leading companies that have taken steps to improve the food supply. Steak and Shake moved to a 100% all-natural beef tallow and replaced its buttery blend, which contained seed oils with 100% grade A Wisconsin butter. And let me tell you, I've been there recently for the first time in a long time, and Steak and Shake is absolutely crushing it. Highly recommended. McCormick announced it will drop certain food dyes from its products, and PepsiCo announced it will remove artificial ingredients from popular food lines and items, including Lay's, Tostitos chips, and by the end of the year, they will be gone altogether. Amazing timing on all this as we really go into, it depends on your calendar. We're in the second quarter ourselves, but now you're approaching the third, even fourth in some cases. And that's amazing timing to get rid of all of those. So good on PepsiCo. In-N-Out announced it will remove synthetic food dyes and artificial flavors from its food menus and also transition to 100% beef tallow. Let me tell you, when you're out in California, and I think they've come as far east now towards us to Texas, In-N-Out, that's quite a place to enjoy some delicious traditional burgers. Now, Tyson Foods eliminated synthetic dyes in its food products, and Mars removed titanium dioxide from its Skittles product. I mean, doesn't that scare you to think titanium dioxide? It might be a good diet item for a robot, but for a human being, I don't think so. Sam's Club committed to removing 40 harmful ingredients, including artificial colors, additives, dyes, and high fructose corn syrup from its private label products. And Kraft Heinz has announced it will remove artificial dyes from United States products. General Mills announced it will remove artificial dyes from its U.S. cereals and all foods served in K through 12 schools. Nestle announced it will remove all petroleum-based food dyes from its food and beverage products. Conagra Foods announced it will remove certain color additives from its frozen products, no longer offer products with artificial dyes in K through 12 schools, and stop using artificial dyes in the manufacturing of its products. J.M. Smucker announced it will remove synthetic colors from its consumer food products. And Hershey, the classic chocolate brand, announced it will remove synthetic dyes from its snacks. And finally, Consumer Brands announced it will urge its members to remove artificial colors in food and beverage products served in schools. So this is exciting to see that companies voluntarily doing this. As you see a live shot outside of the Capitol Hill Club. And for those not familiar, that is more or less the country club of Republicans on Capitol Hill, or right near there in the heart of Washington, D.C. A very fun place to enjoy with colleagues, with staff, and those who really, we want to see how the baking is done, the cooking and the baking in Washington, if you will, how the sausage is made. Capitol Hill Club, definitely a place to attend and enjoy with friends and staff and those who might be in Washington, D.C. So it looks as if we'll actually have the press conference outside of there, which I guess is a change a little bit of a venue because they tend to be right on Capitol Hill itself, but looks like it'll be outside of the Capitol Hill Club today, just blocks away from our nation's capital. A wonderful club, and actually right there, a little piece of history for you. John McCain was born, or actually first lived right on the naval barracks that now take up the Capitol Hill Club, because he was born on the naval base to his parents, of course, and that was the location of naval barracks in Washington, D.C., where his father was assigned. So that area right there, actually the first home of John McCain. So some fun facts for you, the late senator from Arizona and naval aviator. So, you know, I have to bring you a little bit of piece of history on almost every broadcast, so you have that there if you're not familiar. But it's a beautiful Tuesday morning in Washington, D.C. I'm sure humid, as it is this time of year in July. And we know that President Trump is continuing with his agenda, meeting yesterday with NATO Secretary Mark Rutte, who was also for 14 years from 2010 to 2024 the Dutch Prime Minister. And he is the one who coined the term Daddy's Home for President Trump during that NATO summit in Amsterdam. And a certain change of policy, a major announcement where the United States will be supplying Patriot missiles to NATO via Europe, but Europe and NATO paying for all this is perhaps why many of the member states, all but one, Spain, stayed out of this, but they all went up to 5% GDP across the board to pay for the security pact. And this is in response to President Trump stating that Vladimir Putin, they have good phone calls, they talk all the time, but the Russian leader says good things. There's Congressman Ronnie Jackson. Maybe let's go in there in case he might be answering some questions. Looks like he's getting away at the moment, but a good stakeout spot for the press in Washington, D.C., because you will have many members coming in and out of this club as they get to business on Capitol Hill. So for a nice refreshment or maybe some coffee, some breakfast, as I'm sure many bills and policy items being discussed. We'll hear soon from House GOP leadership with this press briefing. So yesterday, being announced, the Patriot missiles going over to Ukraine, Europe and NATO paying for those at 100%. And the Secretary General of NATO, Mr. Mark Rutte, saying that it makes sense why the United States would not want to fund this. This is not our war. President Trump simply wants to end this. And so I think you saw in some of the legacy items and media that this was a huge shift in American foreign policy. Yes, it's a shift, but really the same outcome is wanted. The fact that President Trump wants this war to end. The fact that the war would have never began if he was still president and if it was not for the auto pen. But we know that this president has criticisms left, right, and center all of the time. And he continues to really make America great again. We saw that at the Faith Office luncheon just yesterday as a room full of people in the state dining room standing and cheering for President Trump. And it makes sense considering all of the accomplishments in the last 6 months. No modern administration has moved this quickly on so many different items, namely securing our border, passing true reform with not only tax reform, but also making permanent those Trump tax cuts from the first term. And this agenda really moving swiftly, not only throughout Republican ranks, but Washington, D.C. and the country as a whole. Thank you to our sponsor, All Family Pharmacy. A new deal here. RSBN 10 is your code. 10% off NAD+, methylene blue, ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, and much, much more, including Mebendazole. 200 essential medications, antibiotics. Order now by going to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan the QR code there. 10% off with code RSBN10, RSBN10. And we've seen the terrible storms in Texas. Our thoughts and prayers still with those in the Hill Country, a beautiful part of the world with the Mystic Camp. It's horrible to see a situation like that, but how does that relate to your life? Not only seeing your fellow Americans suffer, and we must pray for them, we're called to do that, but you also need to take care of your home by stocking up your medicine cabinet, by having these essential medications on the road with you as you travel this summer. There's a new COVID variant out there. There's also plenty of illnesses of bacteria and viral infections that can go throughout the summer. So be prepared. Don't be scared. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. 10% off now. A great deal. NAD+, Mebendazole, methylene blue, ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, essential medications that are proven to take care of you and even be life-saving in many cases. 200 essential medications, antibiotics, all there for you. These are doctors, nurses, and healthcare providers, pharmacists who want to get rid of the red tape, the bureaucracy. And if you don't have insurance, there's no hassle, there's no problem. Order today, right now, 9:15 Eastern. It will be on your door by 9:15 tomorrow morning. That's the guarantee. 10% off, RSBN10. That's the QR code there to scan and the code to use when you order, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. And while you're at that too, why not make some fun bets? Because tonight is the All-Star Game for Major League Baseball, the Midsummer Classic. But you also have questions like, will Elon Musk create a new political party this year? Will President Trump continue pardons for those individuals? We'll see what happens. This is a wild time to be alive, but you were born for such a time as this. So why not have fun trading and betting on the biggest questions that are facing America and the world, including who will win tonight, the National League or the American League, to give home field advantage for the World Series. We'll see from Truist Park in beautiful Atlanta, Georgia, the Peach State. Kalshi.com/RSBN. Trade on literally anything. Might as well and enjoy some betting and trading in the meantime. Kalshi.com/RSBN. And let's talk about that All-Star game. You remember a few years ago when Major League Baseball finally it's come to its senses, but they got caught up in the summer of love, and Stacey Abrams, really a bizarre individual in her own right, a communist who claimed that the voting laws were racist and illegal in the Peach State of Georgia. I ran for state representative in Georgia. I've lived in Georgia the past 3.5 years. It is one of the easiest processes in the entire country to go and vote. No one is thirsty in line. No one is starving of hunger. It was all lies by the far left that took place. And Major League Baseball, like many corporations at the time, caved to the political pressure and pulled the All-Star game 4 years ago from the beautiful Atlanta, Georgia. And they've come to their senses. They're returning to where it should have been in the first place. And remember what happened that season. The Braves ended up winning the World Series. And I don't necessarily believe in karma, but karma bites. And it did that season as the Braves were able to pull out a major victory and celebrate with countless individuals in the great Peach State of Georgia. They're a regional team, and you find a lot of fans down here in Alabama as well. So I have this somewhat of a connection as a Chicago Cubs fan to the great Atlanta Braves, given TBS and WGN the history of television. Both networks brought those teams across the country, and that's why you find so many Braves and Cubs fans as a result of that. So I hope you enjoyed tonight. Kick back, enjoy the Midsummer Classic. Baseball in beautiful Atlanta, Georgia, and the jobs that will be brought back to the area that were stolen because of people like Stacey Abrams and communists who wanted to push and peddle a fake narrative that you could not vote simply because you would not have an ID. What's a more racist statement than that, to say that a certain population can't obtain an identification card and then to push this narrative? It's all a bunch of hogwash. So we're very excited, if you're a baseball fan, to catch that tonight. Now, Jim Pfaff recently came on the show, the president of the Conservative Caucus. We want to play his interview in its entirety because it's touching on these very core and crucial issues facing the country and the world over the course of the last couple of weeks. So we dive into that and have that interview ready for your viewing pleasure before the House GOP leadership holding a press briefing at the top of the hour. Stick with us and enjoy our recent interview with Jim Pfaff of the Conservative Caucus. And we are joined by Jim Pfaff, president of the Conservative Caucus. The one big beautiful bill has passed. So what is your take on the positives in the law, the not so positives, and where this very slim majority, now 219 to 214, with the announced resignation of Representative Mark Green of the volunteer state of Tennessee, where does this all go for the Republican majorities leading into 2026?
Well, it depends on what the next steps are. Listen, the bill we're very positive about overall because the net benefit is good for the American people. You have finally, for the first time since I've been doing politics, which is about 30 years now, permanent tax cuts. Like the Trump tax cuts from 2017 were made permanent in law. If they want to change the income tax structure, they're going to have to actually pass a bill to increase taxes. That actually is pretty profoundly excellent. The tax, the ability for 5 years of businesses to be able to expense out in the first year their investments in equipment and so forth. That's a very positive thing. And some of the cuts to Medicaid were pretty good. $500 million cut in Planned Parenthood funding for a year, no Planned Parenthood funding or any abortion provider. That's pretty amazing. So I'm very pleased with a lot of that stuff. But there still was so much left on the table, so much more that could have been done and necessary to do for a future economy, because we still aren't getting out of the debt spiral. So I'm positive about it net, but some missed opportunities with Mike Johnson saying that they want to do 2 more rescission bills in the fall and next spring. And if they do the right thing and they do the rescission cuts, then we can have a really positive year for 2026.
And is that more on the discretionary spending side or more of the mandatory spending with what you were explaining there about some of those misses?
Yeah, so the reconciliation bill, which is this bill that they just passed, and the purpose of that is to change up any policy in the current budget. That's all non-discretionary spending. That's the spending we do where if anyone qualifies for a program that Congress created, then they're going to get paid. You don't cap the budget on any of that. Qualification is a standard. That's why you see so much growth in these welfare programs, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. So they could have done a lot more reform in those areas that would have been very positive, and they could have done it. These rescission packages, what they are requests of Congress that come from the White House to pull back certain areas of spending out of the current budget structure that they have on the discretionary side. And those are the amounts that are specifically authorized with a cap on the various programs. The DOD gets a certain budget up to a certain amount. USDA gets all these agencies get a certain amount for their budget. They can't spend any more. The purpose of a rescission is to draw back some of that spending. I believe there are up to $500 billion of rescission possibilities that are in there. If the Trump administration gets those across, and Mike Johnson says he'll work to get them passed, that could be a very positive. We're seeing a test of that right now. There was a $9 billion rescission that came out just a few weeks ago, and it was passed by the House. We're still waiting for the Senate to act on it. If they'll act on it and then act on all of these, I think you'll see a very positive response by Americans going into 2026, because this is what they're looking for. This is what they voted for.
And do you think anything will be related to maybe the Second Amendment issues that some congressmen were concerned about with the One Big Beautiful Bill? And that was mostly due to the Senate parliamentarian pulling out some of that language, but also as it relates to the Green New Deals, that has been something on the left that they've tried to sneak on in there as part of, in a sense, pork barrel spending, just getting that amendment in there so that can remain intact. Do you think the Republican Congress will tackle any of that?
Well, they could do all of that in the next rescission bill. And in fact, John Thune should look the parliamentarian in the eye and say, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but this is wrong. And anyway, we make the rules. So, and he just needs to do it. Look, we're in a desperate time potentially right now. I do agree with Donald Trump that this last reconciliation bill, and also Scott Bessent's been making this, the Treasury Secretary has been making this case. I think there will be some positive growth come out of it from the tax structure size. But if we cannot get this spending under control, we always have a risk of inflation, because we just added, the ability of Congress to spend $5 trillion more above its budget in this bill. That's a lot of money. If we go through all of that, I mean, we just printed up about $7 trillion in 2021, the Federal Reserve did, and that was the biggest thing that spiked the inflation during the Biden administration. And we haven't fully recovered from it yet, although the Trump policies so far are helping. We have to help that side of it too, because every money that's spent by government is taken out of the economy. And that means it's not being put into productive use, or very, very minor productive use at all. That has to change. And the ideas that you brought up, as well as some other things, if they can do it in another reconciliation, it would really help. There is a lot of opportunity here, particularly when it comes to getting rid of the Green New Scam.
And to your point, Jim, with your experience in Congress and on Capitol Hill, say there's a swing district, things come to mind like a Georgia 6 or even like a Georgia 7, the suburbs of America. If it's a Republican or even Democrat representative trying to come in there with a PVI index of less than 10. So for those viewing who don't know PVI, it is what's the likelihood of a district to swing one direction or another. Do you think each individual representative is going to have more of a shot coming back to their constituents saying, I was able not only to give you tax cuts, but permanent change from Congress to stop the bleeding, to stop the spending? Would that be more popular? Or do you see it coming from a Democrat direction saying, oh, there's going to be cuts to this program and that program? Are we so addicted to our debt and our spending that the constituents would have a specific way of voting as a result in 2026?
Oh, I think the Republican message between the two that you just gave is a much stronger one. The American people are not buying this world's coming to an end when it comes to cutting spending. In fact, the New York Times over the weekend, with these tragic floods that happened in the hill country of Texas over the weekend, they're trying to make the case that it was Trump cuts that caused most of these deaths. But that has been entirely debunked on social media and elsewhere, because the reality is there was plenty of coverage, plenty of ability to take care of these things. And in fact, Michael Schellenberger came out with some very good information showing that the local county needed to beef up some of its emergency procedures, and that the National Weather Service had beefed up staff prior to that storm coming in. So that narrative is losing every single time it comes out. I just use that as an example. So if they come back in to the districts and say, yeah, the world's falling apart because Donald Trump's making cuts, it's not resonating with the American people right now. It's only resonating with the most committed Democrats who just hate Donald Trump, and it's not penetrating anywhere else. And this is why I make the case, though, that if they will cut about $500 billion through rescissions, that's a powerful message to take back to the states and in these elections. Because what it's going to allow these Republican congressional candidates to do is to say, listen, we needed to pare back government. We're in a better place now than we've been in a long time. We're doing government cuts on an annual basis right now, more than we've done in decades. And the world's not only is the world not falling apart, we're actually doing much better. That is the kind of message that people are looking for, because that's action taken rather than criticism being given. And that always net works in campaign politics.
Yeah, it reminds me somewhat of 1992, Ross Perot versus George H.W. Bush, and the argument that without Ross Perot being involved in that, you never have a Clinton presidency. But if the Republican message is able to come back and say, hey, we did this with a rescission package, and this is something that might be in the future, as you mentioned, then there's no need for Elon Musk's American Party or this third-party movement that really is one issue, but a core issue, the spending and our deficit, because, as Senator Rand Paul has said, it really can be a national security issue. How do you compare the two? Because we had President Bush 41 once mention, read my lips, no new taxes. President Trump has been a lot stronger on that with cutting the regulations, even from the first term when he started right out the gate with every new regulation needed at least 2 cut, and perhaps even moving at a faster, rapid race right now. But there seems to be a really a need, or almost a thriving for a third-party movement, if this core message and promise does not get delivered by congressional Republicans.
Well, I'm not convinced at all that there is an uprising for the third-party movement. There'll be some movement toward it. I think the challenges of ballot access and also vetting candidates that people want to vote for, I mean, that takes a long time to do, and I think it's going to be very challenging for Elon Musk to have any success there. That being said, Republicans work very hard to grab defeat out of the jaws of victory every election cycle when they're doing well. And George H.W. Bush is a great example. He did not have to raise taxes. He could have pushed back against the Democrat Congress he was facing at that time and said to Leon Panetta, who was the majority leader in the House at the time, said, screw you. I'm not going to break my promise. So you figure it out, and then I'll sign it when you're ready. He didn't have the courage to do that. He still would have won if Ross Perot had been there. So that brings me to the main point. Remember, that was a presidential year election. We're going into a congressional election only, a midterm between presidential elections. The dynamics are a bit different between those two things. You have lower voter turnout because there's not as much excitement on the national stage. Presidential elections bring out voters that we call ones or twos often. Those are people that over the last 4 elections only voted 1 or 2 times. Those people tend to come out in presidential years. They don't come out in anywhere near the numbers in congressional years typically. So that's the other factor that's there. There's nothing strong to coalesce around, is I guess what I'm trying to say. People could coalesce around Ross Perot because that's one figurehead and one person that you're talking about. Whereas when you're talking about different congressional districts, and Elon said he's only going into a few of them, then you can't nationally coalesce around that. So can they put in enough money? And by the way, money doesn't win elections. There's no correlation between money and election winning. If that were the case, then Elon Musk would have gotten the Republican Supreme Court candidate elected in Wisconsin that he put millions of dollars into. And that guy lost big. So, and I'm not trying to be critical of Elon as a person. I'm a big fan of Elon Musk. The problem is that this is not the way to get done what he wants to get done. The best way that I would recommend is for him to get involved in primaries and Republican primaries all over the country, help recruit candidates that will take down some of these bad members. Listen, I maintain that our problem is not the Thomas Masseys of the world or the Rand Pauls of the world. If we had 55 Rand Pauls as Republicans and 220 Thomas Masseys as in the House, then Donald Trump would get everything that he wanted and more. Whereas, and the other person that Donald Trump went after was Tom Tillis, who thankfully has pulled out of the Senate race for re-election in North Carolina. That's a big advantage. If you had 220 Tom Tillises and 55 Tom Till in the House and 55 Tom Tillises in the Senate, Donald Trump would get nothing of what he wanted. They would all be working against him. That's the big difference. And so primaries are where this really matters. And it's not going to address all the issues, but if you can add 10 or 15 more members to the House Freedom Caucus, then you can literally stop the bad crap fully on Capitol Hill, and you take a lot of power away from the appropriators, who are the real people working behind the scenes to stop the Trump agenda.
Now, there is some discussion on a possible legislative challenge, even a bill that might come forward that could redraw what the census had done based on the 14th Amendment and now with the recent Supreme Court ruling. Do you think anything can move forward like that? And I believe it's been quite some time since a challenge on something like that, because we have our censuses every 10 years. How would that proceed forward? And do you see that as being part of President Trump's legislative agenda moving now towards the end of 2025 into early 2026?
Well, I'm certain it would pass out of the House, and it probably should. But there is no way that it's going to get out of a Senate when it has to go through the cloture rule, which is basically the filibuster rule, to proceed to a vote. Chuck Schumer's never going to allow it. The changes that need to be made are benefiting Democrats right now, and they want it to stay that way. In fact, they rigged it to that end. Now, I would like to see, because some of this census policy can be addressed, in my opinion, through a reconciliation package. And if they were to do this in reconciliation in the fall and able to get that through, that would be a powerful and helpful tool. It is something that does need to be done. It's just going to be a real challenge unless you can get 60 votes in the Senate, because this thing benefits the Democrats right now. They want this for not only in 2026, but they want it in 2028 as well, when it's still no census would have happened. But yes, there is a constitutional command to do a census every 10 years. There's no restriction to do it any sooner. It's just Congress has to fund it and authorize it. So yes, I think it could be done, and I would like to see it pushed.
Could it be pushed before 2026, or what next election would it have the effect upon? So would it be the midterms or the presidential in 28? Well,
so practically, if this were voted on in the next few weeks and the change were made, then every state legislature is going to have to introduce bills at the beginning of next year. Right? I mean, the census would have to take place. I don't think it would have any effect until 2028. I don't think you can squeeze it in for 2026. I mean, maybe there's some path that I'm unaware of that can get that done, but you have to have the legislatures redraw the districts. You're already into an election cycle at the beginning of 2026, and there are election calendars in every state that lay out when you need to print ballots, when ballot access needs to be validated by the various people wanting to run, by following those rules. And all that's laying out up to the spring of every year. So the legislature would still have to act on changes to districts. They could conceivably do it, but they're not going to have the census data. So I think the best chance of this having an effect is 2028, if it were passed this year, or maybe even next year. But that's when you'd have to get it done.
And that's a good point as well, Jim, because most of our state legislatures are part-time. Some are full-time in nature, but Georgia's a great example of that they're in session January really through April, maybe the first week of May. And then they have their sign die to really look back at every bill that's on the table in the House and the Senate, and it really ramps up into a 48-hour spree, and so many other states are like that. And of course, we know Governor Brian Kemp, not always a fan of bringing in an emergency session of the legislature. So that's just one example of that, and a really good point for the future. But we know President Trump does have a strong legislative agenda, does remain in contact with really everyone on the Hill, especially House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senator John Thune, stating that if I was a king, I wouldn't have to talk to all these people. So we've seen now this Monday, July 7th, that he's put the tariff letters in the direction of Japan, also in the direction of South Korea. What do you see prior to the meeting tonight between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump on the future of the Middle East, as Bibi, a friend of the United States, coming to visit the White House once again to see President Trump?
Well, I'm still, even though I've seen that Israel accepts the peace plan that Donald Trump had put forth, and they were willing to sign off on it, the 60-day ceasefire, I still haven't yet seen any movement with Hamas in Gaza, or whoever is running Gaza these days. So I think it's just going to be another step where we figure out if that's making any progress. I think that there's a lot at stake, because if they can get that ceasefire done, there's a decent chance that more Arab countries in the region would join the Abraham Accords. There's talk that Saudi Arabia is seriously thinking about it, but they've got a few conditions that are required there. I think that's what's the biggest thing that's at stake with Netanyahu's meetings and what Netanyahu's actions are over the next few months. There's a real opportunity for wonderful peace in the region. If the Abraham Accords come to fruition, that also helps deal with the Iran situation. Even though Iran is still committed to being radical, and their leaders were not taken out over the recent 12-day war, they're still there, and they're going to put up a strong face, whatever they want to do. But when you've got Arab countries lining up behind Israel, and there's something substantive behind it, it puts more pressure on Iran to get things done. I think that's maybe the biggest thing that's at stake right now in these meetings, is the next steps that can get the path open for an expansion of the Abraham Accords. And it would be one of Donald Trump's greatest accomplishments, maybe the greatest accomplishment as president, and he would deserve the Nobel Prize. I think he already does deserve the Nobel Prize, Peace Prize, in my opinion.
As the Pakistani government now has nominated him, along with other congressmen and other organizations throughout the United States and abroad. So he really stands a chance to being able to do that, because even, the Gulf states, it was one thing to go after Iran and say this unequivocally was wrong to attack Doha, Qatar, a traditional ally of the Iranians. but then they warn them prior, and then in turn the emir warns the president of the United States. It seems as if that was more done for show so that the Iranian state government can say to the state media, look at what we did to retaliate, if you will. And I say retaliate in quotations there. But that did surprise me. Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of Palestine, also joining the Arab and Muslim world seemingly to almost stand up for the United States and Israel and say, enough, Iran. This is a new day, a new path forward for the cause of peace. Well,
listen, the dominoes are falling in the Middle East. That trip that Donald Trump took, meeting with various Arab countries a couple months ago, was really astounding. And prior to this thing that happened with Iran, and that's why you would see a Mahmoud Abbas coming out like he did, because they're reading the tea leaves. I mean, Mahmoud Abbas wants to be negative to Israel all he can. He's just noting that all of his potential benefactors, many of whom are not necessarily state actors, they're just people in various states, they're all getting the word from their state actors, back off. We're not going to have this anymore. You got to stop. That word's getting around, and that's why, the PLO organization that he runs over on the West Bank is maybe backing off. But there is a real opportunity here. Donald Trump is the biggest reason that it has happened, because he was determined and he was willing to be gentle with everyone while having a bit of a stick on the back end. I hope that there's something positive that comes out of it. It's a real opportunity for the world right now, at least for some decades to come, if he can pull it all off.
It almost gives a new meaning to speak softly and carry the big stick. It's really a new thing for American politics on the domestic side and internationally, and I'm sure does cause fear in the hearts of many leaders across the world when you can have B-2 bombers go into Iranian airspace, or anywhere for that matter, and go in, complete the mission, and be undetected with no casualties on either side, with no surface-to-air missiles fired. That in and of itself is remarkable. Let's take it back stateside a bit. Caroline Leavitt in the White House press briefing today, breaking some news in regards to the DOJ, the FBI, have found that there is no real viable Epstein client list, which was kind of the smoking gun that a lot were looking for in order to, I guess, bring justice to several of these perpetrators who would do the unthinkable, and it's to molest and harass and harm young minor children. Now, we know his former lover, Ghislaine Maxwell, in prison for potentially many of these crimes. Where do you see this all going? And do you see that this Department of Justice, this FBI, still remaining committed to putting those perpetrators, bringing them to justice?
Well, I'll tell you what, the entire MAGA base right now is asking the same question that you just asked, because they don't know. This is a very challenging thing for Donald Trump supporters. And the reason why is the people who are now saying these things that were just reported, beginning yesterday with that memo that came out that said there's no client list, says, and the various other things it said, and then Caroline Leavitt confirming it today. The real challenge for people is, okay, you made that conclusion, but on what basis? And the people who made the conclusion are some who were the most vocal in saying that the information needed to get out there. Here's what I see here. There's a real challenge for Donald Trump right now. He needs to be able to convince his base, with the emergence of Elon's America Party, that he's got their back on it. And I think the best way to do that is transparency. I think you need to lay significant amounts and portions of the records, just like you said you were going to do. Remember, they had that big release a few months ago at the White House where some online influencers were given binders of the Epstein Files. I know one of those influencers that was there, and the information in that binder was not very significant. But they said, we're going to do this in steps. Well, the only steps that we've seen is shutting down that process, not extending it. So I think they're going to have to get some information out. I've said for years, that somewhere in the order of 70 to 90% of all classified documents are classified for political purposes. I would also argue that there's a decent amount of documents, although there's a little bit more reason to do this, there are a decent amount of legal documents that that are thrown into that legal box, so to speak, because we're in the middle of an investigation for political purposes. That happens too. There's sometimes that takes place. In some form or fashion, though, based on the promises made, I think Donald Trump's administration, I think that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are going to have to release something that shows significantly proves what they're saying. Just to say trust us is not going to happen. I see a potential rift forming. I do not believe the Epstein files are the most important thing that we need to be looking at. I think they're very important, and I think they're going to reveal some really rancid activity from political and financial leaders in this country and around the world. And so that needs to be known, because these people, by and large, are making big decisions that affect all of us. But I think the real significant thing that has to take place is the Ratcliffe letter that came out last week, showing more significantly how John Brennan and Barack Obama worked out a situation to try to take down Donald Trump during his administration. That is the functional, institutional problem that needs to get taken care of. The Epstein files probably mix into something like that, but to my knowledge, John Brennan never went to Epstein Island. And so therefore, whatever is there is not going to relate to him. But the guy is determined enough to take down a sitting president if he can. These people need to be exposed as well. I think that's maybe the more significant thing that needs to be revealed to the American public, and prosecutions forthcoming. But I do believe that with the Epstein files and many of these other things, by the way, we don't even have all the JFK files. We got a significant bit more than we've ever had, but we don't have them all. I think the American people are just waiting, and the MAGA base for sure is waiting for a follow through on these promises to be transparent in these particular areas. If he can do that, then this won't metastasize into something bad. But at present, there's a wound. I'm seeing it all over social media. I'm getting asked about it a lot. I even am getting pushed back on in social media when I say the most important thing is the Radcliffe thing. People think I'm absurd. What are you talking about? They're so upset about this Epstein file thing that when I try to throw that bit into it, they go crazy. And they treat me like I'm some sort of, betrayer or something. But I know that what I'm saying is correct. I know of some key people who are saying the same thing privately right now. The most important thing is this other stuff. But Donald Trump still needs to get the info out. He needs to let people know what's going on with transparency on these Epstein documents, because otherwise he doesn't want to have to come to a place where he has to save face on this issue, because Pam Bondi and Kash Patel didn't seem to have the fortitude to move things forward.
And all of it together, regardless of where this lands, really makes Watergate look like child's play, because it really has become a web of lies that I think, to your point, Jim, if you could find, if there was lawlessness happening within the Obama administration, which we know of these meetings, we know of certain people in certain times and places, and really the communist leanings and ties of John Brennan and his anti-American activity dating back to his college days, it might lead us down a rabbit hole that will expose a lot of truth in the coming weeks and months here.
Every major problem that we are having right now in our political discourse, in the attempts at censorship and the lawfare that we have been going through over the last 10, 12 years, has its origins in Barack Obama. Now, much of this was existing in our government prior to this. But speaking of Watergate, Watergate was a horrible corruption. There's no doubt about it. But I have to tell you something. If you really look closely at the corrupting things that have been happening over the last 10 plus years, with the Russia hoax, with the 2020 elections, the Hunter Biden laptop letter, the lawfare against Donald Trump, Watergate looks like kids play. It looks like a couple guys that were standing around the corner waiting for certain politicians to come, and they had squirt guns and they squirted them unnecessarily in their suits and made them look bad on camera. Like that's really what Watergate is compared to this other thing, which is literally like a robbery and I'm saying this in a figurative way, murders. I mean, these are political schemes to destroy political opponents, whereas Richard Nixon was just trying to get a leg up on an election. And that's bad. I'm not saying it's good, but it doesn't even compare to this. That's the scale of the problem that we're looking at here. Our greatest existential risk right now is to allow deep state actors to continue down the path that they've been going down over the last 20 plus years, but mostly since the Obama administration, because Barack Obama weaponized our government and institutionalized it against the American people in a very third world fashion. And we have to extract ourselves from that. And if we can do that by exposing communists, as you rightly call him, like John Brennan, and expose the communist efforts on these LA riots and the No Kings demonstrations, which were funded in part literally by communists. If we can get to that place where we can expose this for what it is, then we can get ourselves on a good path. It's bad enough the risks that we have with our budgetary situation, which is just out of control. But these institutions will keep any budgetary effort, positive budgetary change in the future from happening if they can, by keeping these problems embedded into our federal system so that the American public can't do, again, what this institutions didn't want, which is for Donald Trump to get elected again. So we're probably never going to see another Donald Trump. But if we want anything like him, we better get this solved, and quickly.
Jim Pfaff, president of the Conservative Caucus, and I could say for this week, to hit it off as a home run right after the 4th of July, this is the interview of the week. There's no question about it. We love your in-depth analysis of the Hill and everything outside the Beltway as well, sir. We look forward to having you again on Right Side Broadcasting Network Live very soon.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
And our many thanks to Jim Pfaff of the Conservative Caucus, president of that fine organization, as we await House GOP leadership to hold a press briefing with my former congressman, Rich McCormick. Seems to keep walking in and out of that door at Capitol Hill Club. A great man and a great congressman serving the 7th District of Georgia. Now, we await that. Thank you to our sponsors, angelpaste.com, a really wonderful company. Let me tell you about it because you've seen me try it here on the network. All you have to do for glowing hands is choose Angel Paste. It's the absolute miracle with their Miracle Cream Original, vitamin B infused, non-GMO, no chemicals. Also, again, good for your skin to absorb, so you don't have to worry about it like other products that you might not recognize the ingredients on the back of it. They also have an immunity option that is known by Orange, and it's vitamin C infused, non-GMO, no chemicals. Also, their facial spray and a natural mosquito repellent, all based out of Spring, Texas. They're Christian-owned, hire veterans, and they know a thing or two about those mosquitoes down there off the Gulf of America. So why not be prepared with great miracle creams that will repel those pesky buggers during the summer months? So experience the miracle today along with other incredible products at angelpaste.com. And if you're struggling with sleep or you just need a couple of extra great items to help get your day started off the right way, turn to none other than mypillow.com/RSBN, the free shipping sale. You can get the My Cross that Mike Lindell wears himself. There's a male and female version. Also, that's going for 50% off. The MyPillow bed sheets now as low as $24.98 in all colors and sizes. And the multi-use MyPillow 2.0, now $9.98. That's better than any lunchtime deal with the God, all things are possible MyPillow 2.0, the red, white, and blue, Lady Liberty, and some of the more traditional colors as well, gray, white, pink, red, white, blue, whatever you'd like to have for your home decor. MyPillow.com/RSBN. Call today. Do not delay. 800-836-7566. The free shipping sale. Support Mike Lindell and RSBN. He's the purveyor of free speech, the defender of election integrity, and maybe, just maybe, the next governor of Minnesota. Gosh, that great state can use someone with common sense up there. And what's so nice about all his products, made right here in the good old U.S. of A. MyPillow.com/RSBN. Thank you to Mr. Mike Lindell for supporting us here on the right side of history as we await the top of the hour for House GOP leadership to cover a number of different items on the docket this beautiful Tuesday morning, July 15th. It is 1 year ago this week that the Republican National Committee convened their convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to nominate for the third straight cycle Donald John Trump to become president of the United States. And this was hours after an assassination attempt would take place at 6:11 in the evening in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th, 2024. The resilience of the president, his family, his supporters, and the Competor family who lost their very own, Corey, a firefighter who covered his family when bullet fire went towards the president and towards the crowd. And the crowd, mind you, that did not move, that did not create a sort of stampede or rush for exits, but rather listen to law enforcement in a very confusing moment, in a moment we'll never forget. I think all of us will remember where we were for that situation. I remember where I was, and to see the president stand back up with blood covering his face, simply wanting to grab his shoes, telling his Secret Service detail to hold on a moment, and then the fight showed the courage of the man and his willingness to serve this great country of ours. Now 6 months into a new administration where we're seeing win after an incredible decade-plus fight to make America great again. And in so many ways, the movement just getting started. Now, President Trump also putting out on Truth Social in the last several hours here a big success with a Supreme Court ruling, stating that the Supreme Court has handed a major victory to parents and students across this great country of ours by declaring the Trump administration may proceed on returning the functions of the Department of Education back to the states. Now, with this great Supreme Court decision, our Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, may begin this very important process. The federal government has been running our education system into the ground, but we are going to turn it all around by giving the power back to the people. America's students will be the best, the brightest, and the most highly educated anywhere in the world. Thank you to the United States Supreme Court. So a big amicus brief just yesterday, and President Trump celebrating that with the court today. So now that follows his executive order, if you remember earlier this year, to rid the federal government of the Department of Education, fulfilling that promise and the vision of the late, great Ronald Reagan, who was not able to succeed in doing so, but saw even back then how the Department of Education was stealing states' rights and local power and authority over the way you educate children in America. And certain powers, based on our 10th Amendment and our Constitution, grant those rights to the states and localities. And President Thomas Jefferson said it way back when that the best form of government really is township government. It's something you see more in New England and throughout the Midwest, not so much the South and the West, but to limit the units of government, to bring your neighbor representing you or vice versa. That's how you could go knock on the door and actually work in the powers that be and in the halls of the influence around your community. It's about local governance, and the states, 50 of them, 6 territories, all laboratories for democracy. That's the brilliance of the concept of this nation, and something that is tried and true. And even with Alexander Hamilton, the late great Treasury Secretary, with all of his writings in the Federalist Papers, wanted a strong centralized government in Washington, D.C. If he were to see what has happened to it now, I'm sure he'd be rolling in his grave. 200 years later, because it's insane how big the bureaucracy has become. But as President Reagan once said, the closest thing to eternal life in the world and on earth is a government program. But this government, this constitutional government you put into place, is trying to scale the size and scope down to something reasonable, so you again can have control over the government you put into place for, by, and of the people, one that shall not perish from the earth, to quote the late great President Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg. And it's an exciting time to be alive, a golden era, and we're right here to cover it with you on the right side of history, RSBN's live desk. It's about 10 o'clock Eastern, and that means it's 7 in the morning on the West Coast. Good morning, America. I'm Robert McNeely. It's always just a pleasure to be with you as we await House GOP leadership to hold a press briefing, and we thank our sponsors here on the right side of history, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, a new deal, RSBN 10, that's RSBN 10, the 10% off code for NAD+, methylene blue, ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, and much, much more. Scan that QR code now. Over 200 essential medications for you and yours. If there's a storm in life, we've seen those recently, have your medicine cabinet stocked up and ready to go. There's really no excuse to be unprepared in 2025. And you can also take these emergency medical kits, these life-saving medications, and antibiotics on the road with you. They're very nice and easy to store in a cool, dry area. With a new strain of COVID and bacteria and viral infections out there, or if you're going out to explore this vast wilderness that is in the United States, away from those concrete jungles, even though we have beautiful cities, it's good to get away and enjoy nature, enjoy God's creation. Allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN can be right there for you. So it's 10 o'clock on the East Coast. If you order right now, and I mean right now, you'll get that at 10 o'clock Eastern tomorrow morning at your doorstep. These are doctors, pharmacists, also great nurses who want to get rid of the red tape, the bureaucracy. They want to stand up to the insurance companies that sometimes own pharmacies. Talk about double dipping. So this online pharmacy doing the work that President Trump put into place with that executive order just weeks ago to bring down the cost of prescription medications. But regardless of who's in power, this group is charging forward with their expertise and to bring you affordable medications that are life-saving. Allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. If you like what you see here with our live desk, with still our coverage of rallies from time to time, you caught yours truly and Christina Loren in Des Moines, Iowa for that big, beautiful 249th birthday celebration kickoff leading into America 250. Also, The Voice of Reason on Thursday nights, a primetime show we've rolled out to dive deeper into all of these issues. Please feel free to donate here at the network, rsbnetwork.com/donate. Text RSBN to 801-801. We'd be honored to have your dollars. And I understand I'm not comfortable asking for money, but we are citizen journalists on the ground getting the information needed to bring the real-time stories to you. And if there's something that you wish to opine about, you could write to us, feedback@rsbn.tv. Tell us about a story in your neck of the woods. If you need it to be brought to light, if you need to, or us to dive in there and find those nasty cockroaches that are hiding under those rocks and that are taking advantage of your neighborhood, please, 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 feedback@rsbn.tv. We just want to be on the right side of history, the truth, the correct side, in order to defend the principles of the founders, 56 men who signed that Declaration of Independence nearly 250 years ago in order to form a more perfect union. Our founding documents have stood the test of time, and although we're a young nation, it's a constitutional republic that will last on if you have a free media that defends the founding principles wherever it leads. It's a fearless network, and we're honored to have your viewership. Again, rsbnetwork.com/donate. Please text RSBN to 801-801 if it's $20, if it's $200, whatever you can give. It helps us to advance the mission against a legacy media that more often than not wants to serve its own self-interest and not you, the American people. We're here to serve you at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Thank you for your support and viewership. last decade and ideally a decade or even more to come. Get all America First updates as well and exclusive offers at rsbnetwork.com/newsletter in case you miss a broadcast. Of course, you could scrub back as we stream, but you can also read the written word in addition to a beautiful Sunday devotional. And in fact, I read it every Sunday when I wake up as part of my own devotional practices, because it's a good reminder that God is in control, that this is His nation, and that we will succeed regardless of where scary stories might lead us. It's all part of being in journalism as we await this big, beautiful press conference by House GOP leadership. You're looking at a live shot there in the press room. We had a live shot as well outside of the Capitol Hill Club that I highly recommend visiting if you have a friend, a staffer, perhaps a member of Congress that has the membership there right outside of that green awning. A beautiful part of downtown Washington, D.C., right off of Capitol Hill, just a few blocks from there. And that is actually, as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, that is the first home where John McCain lived. It's an interesting story there. They were naval barracks after he was born overseas on the base and then brought home his first home in Washington, D.C. So some fun facts of the late senator right there, and that was converted into, in a sense, a country club for Republican members and staff. It's a place that can go talk about a number of different issues in the Beltway, outside of the Beltway, and the things affecting the entire world. But always neat to get to sit down and have a favorite beverage with a member of Congress and just talk to them about what's on their mind. And sometimes, because I'm in the media, I have to say that it's off the record, but it can always be on the record too. Just depends if the direction they want to go with things. So an interesting moment on this beautiful summer day here in Auburn, Alabama, the loveliest village on the plains. That's our headquarters, covering everything inside the Beltway for you, the viewers, today. And I'm sure that the rescission packages might be discussed in this press conference as well, because that's been a big discussion. If you watched our recent interview with Jim Pfaff of the Conservative Caucus, he was discussing those very items, the big successes of that law signed on the 4th of July, with that celebration over the White House, the B-2 bombers coming over, that the fireworks, President Trump spares no expense in celebrating this great country, but it made permanent those Trump tax cuts. It really funded fully the border effort to fully secure, although we've seen all of the successes there. Also, a number of different items, including bringing the hard-earned take-home pay into your wallets, keeping it there to give you some relief from all of these taxes. So the average family of four, 2 parents, 2 children, receiving relief up to $10,900 more will be staying in your pocket on average, thanks to the passage of the One Big Beautiful Act, now signed into law by President Trump. And this was brought by the narrowest of terms when it initially passed the House on May 22nd by a reconciliation vote of 215 to 214. Then going on to the Senate, there was a tie break there after the amendments that were introduced there, with only Senator Murkowski of Alaska, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, and Senator Thom Tillis, who has announced his retirement. He will not be running for re-election next year, voting against the bill that then triggered the 50-50 and the tie-break vote by Vice President J.D. Vance to send it back to the House. It was then passed by 219 to 214, the narrowest of margins in order to get that across the board. And actually, it was 218 to 214. The 219 to 214 with 4 vacancies. That's where the House stands at the moment in the leadership count. So we've seen recent interviews here on the network over the course of the last couple of weeks, and really the big theme, 2 of them actually, that all of these interesting mysteries and the perplexing items in Washington, D.C. and throughout the country right now, seemingly leading back to Barack Hussein Obama, his apparatus, the Chicago Democrat machine. He learned from the best and brought that to Washington, D.C. to cause chaos. And you remember his, oh, I have a phone and a pen. Either you do it my way or it's no way. He ushered in a new corrupt system that made it even worse within the Beltway and seemingly ran the auto pen apparatus while Joseph R. Biden Jr. was president, if that even was him. We know his cognitive decline was perhaps the greatest scandal in American presidential politics and history. But that item, as well as the fact that there is not as much involvement in a midterm election as there is in a presidential. There's not as much buzz, even though it's a national consequence. MAGA succeeds when people get engaged, when people vote in their primaries, in their general, and I've really not been open about this comment in and of itself because I'm someone who deeply respects Elon Musk and really everything he's accomplished. But if he wants to pursue this third-party way of doing things, it's not the smartest thing to do ultimately in order to save this great country and continue to push this agenda that is a big tent mantra. So if you're upset with certain key items or people, especially within the House, the best way to do that is to primary them. That's why there's a primary system. We've always had this two-party system. Even when there's been third-party movements in the United States, it's really always developed into the top two candidates going for that top job with that third party somewhat providing the spoiler alert. But because of this great populist movement of the modern American era, I would say post-World War II generations, the third party candidate truly is President Donald Trump, the populist. If it wasn't for Ross Perot and Pat Buchanan and great thought leaders like Rand Paul being a good example of that, and even those who are serving within the halls of Congress now, a few of them really fighting for you on a daily basis against the uniparty deep state League of Shadows and the globalists that take both Republican and Democrat names, the uniparty. If it wasn't for them, there would be no President Donald Trump. As tough as he is, as tough as his movement was, it inspired him ultimately to say, you know what, someone could do it better. Someone who knows a thing or two about money, someone who's tough, someone who First Lady Pat Nixon said, you know what, that young man, Donald Trump, he might be able to do this one day. Roger Stone, having an eye for talent over the years, saying, gosh, I wish Donald Trump would run for president of the United States. And within the same ilk, in my opinion, of Richard Nixon, for the Watergate scandal that it was, Jim Pfaff stating that it's really a shame it happened. But again, this is all child's play. What's happening in today's world compared to that, because there was someone who wanted a leg up on an election. We're now dealing with people who hate America. This is a totally different set of circumstances that should embolden us to be involved peacefully and patriotically in the entire process. And that means running for school board, running for city councils, running for your state legislature, because it's the consent of the governed that this nation stands testament to in our founding documents. It's your involvement. It's that simple. If you choose not to be, don't complain. And even as Barack Hussein Obama always says to his left-wing radicals, don't complain, vote. It's good advice for someone who truly hates this country, and especially his wife as well. She's someone who deeply, deeply hates America. And we can't have people running this great country who hate this country. So much of what President Donald Trump represents is simply loving America and wanting to bring it back to the way it was when he was born in 1946 in Queens, New York. To a scene, something similar of The Sandlot, those iconic fireworks over a baseball diamond as we enjoy the All-Star game tonight. That's America. It's you raising your family, the domestic terrorists out there, as they call you, those who were in prison on January 6th, who were not allowed to enjoy the fruits of their labor and their due process in the Sixth Amendment because they were considered enemies of the state. It's an amazing time to be alive, and you were born for such a time as this, and we're honored here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live to cover it all for you on a daily basis to bring you and your government. We don't edit any of this. We bring it to you in real time, press conferences and speeches, so that you can ultimately make up your mind, because it's something I've seen as a citizen journalist, someone been involved in nonprofits and involved in this movement for a long time now, that you, the American people, know just what the heck you're talking about. I've seen it on a daily basis. I've seen it on the campaign trail, and it's inspiring to say the least, because you are smarter than a few bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. who want to control your life. You're much, much smarter than they are. You know better what to do with your life. And if you've ever seen that beautiful painting, it's a Norman Rockwell photo of the family at church with the American flag in the background. That's ultimately what the communists and the far left globalists, the Uniparty, wants to destroy. Because if they destroy the family, they then can control you. But I know I'm speaking to the choir. You're smart enough to understand that. And I just want you to know, the great viewers here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, you inspire us on a daily basis, and we hope to do you due diligence and justice in getting you the news and everything that's out there in real time as it comes through the channels, because you deserve that. Real journalism, real opinion, and real coverage inside and outside of the Beltway is what you see there live now. We're waiting for a House GOP leadership press briefing to begin with House Speaker Mike Johnson, Leader Steve Scalise, Majority Whip Tom Emmer, also House GOP Conference Chair Linda McClain, among others who are doing really an exceptional job with such a slim majority, one of the slimmest in modern American congressional history. And that's outside some colleagues of ours, the Capitol Hill Club, where Republicans go and discuss the many issues at hand during the day and sometimes in the evening hours to kick back and enjoy with colleagues and discuss the matters at hand inside of the Beltway. And we hope as well, as many of them do, get back to their districts to talk to the real people in America. As we know, President Trump gets out there and does just that with a Supreme Court ruling, him announcing on True Social a major victory to come through, declaring that the Trump administration may proceed with the returning the functions. We're going to toss now to House Speaker Mike Johnson, coming to the podium with Leader Linda McClain.
Well, good morning, everybody. How are you? Good morning. I want to start by looking back 367 days ago. Americans held their breath when they heard the news of the attempted assassination of President Trump. That bullet threatened more than just one man. It threatened our entire nation. If President Trump didn't survive, just think about this for a minute. Would border crossings be at an all-time low? Would Iran not have a nuclear weapon? Would Treasury have received an unexpected surplus as the president levels the playing field through his tariff negotiations? Would the stock market be at an all-time high? I doubt it. Now, as we reflect upon that day, we are reminded of just how far we've come since then and how much more we have to in Butler, Pennsylvania. Now, the last time the House Republicans were in Washington, we kept our promises. Despite all the doubts, House Republicans delivered on the one big, beautiful bill, and we got it to President Trump's desk on will benefit all to Louisiana and from Florida to California. House Republicans kept our promises to cut taxes, no taxes on tips, overtime, and give people more of their Social Security benefits with no taxes on their Social Security. We lifted financial burdens off the backs of American families, law enforcement officers, and House Republicans kept our promise to secure the border by finishing the wall. We restored safety and security in our communities. We kept our promise to unleash American energy, and we strengthened Medicaid for those who need it most. Expanded health saving accounts and created a rural hospital fund. Whether it's lower gas prices, lower taxes, or more jobs, there's something in the one big beautiful bill to help every single American. Compare that to Democrats who voted to raise every American's taxes. And you can be sure that every American will hear about this from members of Congress. House Republicans will be spreading the news of the big historic wins in the one big beautiful bill. We've already kicked things off at our media row, and I hope that you'll join us there. And now I will turn it over to one of my newest colleagues, freshman Representative Jimmy Petronas of Florida. And with him, he will bring a guest who directly benefits from the one big beautiful bill. So you can take it from here.
Thank you, Chair.
You are welcome. All right, let me get my pen so I get it.
Yours is for two. Good morning. Thank you, Speaker Johnson, Majority Leader Scalise, Whip Emmer, and Chair McLean for your leadership on the bill. As a small business owner, I was in the restaurant business for 36 years of my life, and it's really impactful what this legislation is going to ultimately do. I think there's one thing that the President understands. He understands the service industry. And as somebody who has run that industry for the last 36 years, there's a challenge we've had ever since COVID, and that has been just the efforts that we have struggled to try to find an engagement and enthusiasm back in the workforce. I think the President has a secret power, and that secret power is how to grow businesses. With the no tax on tips, we're looking at a $1,300, average $1,300 per service industry employee that is going to have new money in their pocket. That will either be servicing debt, taking care of their family, providing for their family, or just, you know what, just getting to spend their money instead of Washington, D.C. With the no tax and overtime, same thing. We're looking about $1,300. That's going to impact that hourly worker. You think about the enthusiasm that's going to have in bringing people back into the workforce or getting people more enthused about those industries where they know overtime and tips are an engagement of how they get paid. I'm excited. But, you know, now I think about my mom. When you talk about no tax on seniors, they're going to be able to hold on to as much as $6,000 in new deductions back in their pocket to offset the costs and the inflations that have been dealt with them by the Biden administration. We're turning this country around one step after the other. And I tell people all the time, it's not a sprint, it's a march. And we worked so hard to get this bill across the finish line. The men and women up here worked through the night, as we knew at the end of the day, the citizens of the United States spends their money better than Washington, D.C. does. And this is a testament as we're making sure they get to keep more of their money. What I also get excited about is the money that has been committed to air traffic control, as those challenges that we have faced years have been unfortunate. And we know that we've got an aging infrastructure system. It's sad that every single Democrat that serves in that building across the street voted against putting $12 billion back into improving the system. When you look at those dollars and upgrading that aging infrastructure, but more importantly, it's the backbone of economic commerce in our country. And you've got to make those investments. And sometimes it may not be sexy, but by God, to absorb state-of-the-art technology, to have that peace of mind of business in our country. And lastly is I'm so excited as a member of Congress that has 5 installations in this district, whether it's Eglin, Herbert Field, NAS Pensacola, NAS Whiting, Corey Station, or Duke Field. These installations are going to benefit from the one big beautiful bill. As we have seen historic levels, we have exceeded every recruiting goal already now for the entire year. President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have created a new enthusiasm in our United States military. $9 billion to improve the quality of life for our service members. $20 billion to bolster munition production. $12 billion to modernize our nuclear arsenal, and over $5 billion to secure our border. These are game changers, but it also creates an enthusiasm that lets our servicemen and women know they're appreciated, taking care of our veterans, And I'm very excited that means taking care of Florida Congressional District 1. Thank you to the Speaker and his entire team for making this happen. And I want to introduce Frank Patty. Frank Patty and his family, they're a multi-generational difference maker in Northwest Florida, whether it be in their renowned, world-famous fishing market. They have got a seafood market there in Pensacola that whenever you walk in, it's like a circus. It is people are going in every different direction, but it's quality seafood from the Gulf of America and all over the United States as they come in to receive their produce. And then what happened is, as they were running their own fishing fleets, they realized they had to fix the boats that they were using. So what they do, they decided to build their own shipyard. So whether it be running their own seafood market, fixing their own ships, or building the next generation of ships that are taking care of the Army Corps of Engineers or just the private sector, this family has made a commitment, and it's exciting to have them up here being a part of what the big, beautiful bill means to their family and their ability to grow their economy in not just Northwest Florida, but in our country. Frank?
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Thank you so much. Well, appreciate that so much. My name is Frank Patty Jr. I am an owner-operator at Patty Marine Enterprises and Joe Patty Seafood. We are based in Pensacola, Florida. First, I'd like to thank Speaker Mike Johnson and Majority Leader Steve Scalise and Majority Whip Tom Emer and Chairman Lisa McLean. Thank you. And, of course, my buddy Jimmy. It's an honor to speak today from our nation's capital with this incredible team that you have here and speak about this positive impacts of the One Big Beautiful Bill. My daughter Mandy and I are very proud of our family business. My grandparents are both born in Sicily, 10 miles apart from each other, and met for the first time in Pensacola. And how this happened is really amazing, because meeting in Pensacola, my grandfather was running Snapper Smacks down to Campeche. He says, you going to start a business? I'm not raising this family by myself. She says, what are you going to do? You're going to get a boat? We're going to sell bait off the front porch. So here we are 97 years later. 94 years later, I'm sorry. 94 years later, it's a thriving business with high volume, serves thousands of people a day. And then we got into business to build our own fleet. So we set up a shipyard in the parking lot, rolled the first vessels in on wooden logs, very meager beginnings, and built our own fleet, operated our own fleet, sold our own product. Of course, we started building for everybody. So the fishing vessels from Dutch Harbor to Maine. We built the very first licensed gambling boat in the country. We built the largest gambling boat in the country. Did a lot of vessels for the Army Corps of Engineers. Matter of fact, we built more vessels for the Army in a 20-year span than any other shipyard, and got an award from the Corps for outstanding civilian service, and then other significant vessel awards. We are very blessed with all our work. But of course, we want to talk about safety too, because we are very big on safety. And our shipyard, the last 4 national safety awards we got, the last 2 were the best small shipyard in the country, and that was 2 years in a row. So we're very blessed for our great team that we have, and the family that we were blessed with, and my daughter Mandy, who and my son and my grandparents and everybody, that how far we've come. So for our shipyard employees and our seafood employees, the no tax and overtime means more take-home pay, which reflects in greater retention and happier families. Thank you. And for our shipyard operations, the full deductibility of the new construction and the 100% immediate expensing of equipment, and the extension of the Trump tax cuts allows us to reinvest directly into our workforce, our facilities, and grow our future. Even more exciting is the potential for maritime prosperity zones, designating coastal working waterfronts like ours in Pensacola, and prioritizing development areas which will supercharge innovation, attract more skilled labor, and secure American domestic shipbuilding capabilities. With this One Big Beautiful Bill and the prosperity zones together for shipyards like ours, will revitalize the industry with real wage increases and the manufacturing boost needed to meet the maritime demands of the defense and commercial domestic needs. We are very grateful for the leadership of President Trump and this incredible team you have here working hard for the American workers, the American manufacturers, and the small businesses like ours located in Pensacola on the great Gulf of America. Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Great work. Thanks for being here. Patties. This week, we are delivering on President Trump's promise to make America the crypto capital of the world. For too long, digital asset innovation in this country has been stifled by ambiguous rules, instability, and the Biden administration's anti-crypto crusade. Now we have the opportunity to pass a comprehensive, nonpartisan digital asset legislation that will unlock the next era of American innovation, protect consumers, and strengthen the U.S. dollar. Where ambiguity and unclear jurisdiction have stifled blockchain innovation, the Clarity Act will create a much-needed regulatory framework for the digital asset marketplace. Doing this not only gives builders and firms the rules of the road, it also ensures consumers are protected against fraud and bad actors. And the Senate's Genius Act will peg stablecoins to a stable currency, like the U.S. dollar, opening the door for the United States to lead the world in digital finance. The House will also vote on our anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act, which bans the Fed from issuing a central bank currency. Under the Biden administration, financial surveillance gained a foothold in the United States as they explored the creation of a central bank digital currency. CBDCs are already used by governments like the Chinese Communist Party to monitor, track, and judge the financial actions of its citizens. A CBDC would be nothing more than a surveillance tool that could threaten our very way of life. We can't let that happen. These three nonpartisan bills are the culmination of years of work in Congress, and especially in the House. Together, they're going to launch America to the top of the digital asset innovation world and fulfill our promise of making America the crypto capital of the world. We've waited long enough. We must take hold of this opportunity now. This is the week. And with that, I turn it over to our leader.
Thank you, Whip.
Talking about innovation.
We are not done innovating, and we're not done winning. We are just getting started. This House majority keeps delivering for the American people. I know nobody in this room did, but there were some who doubted whether we could pull off passing the one big beautiful bill. There were days when maybe more members than we could lose were out there saying maybe they might not vote for the bill. But this leadership team, led by our Speaker, and especially led by, you think about Donald Trump and the work that he's done to get this country back on track. Donald Trump was all in it, making sure that the one big beautiful bill passed. He made phone calls that he needed to make. He was directly involved in helping usher that bill to his desk. And then we were all there for that great signing on July 4th in the White House to celebrate what's going to be a great American comeback story to get this country back on track. And it's great to welcome the Patties here. Great family business, multi-generational business, almost 100 years. I'll come see y'all if Patronus will have me for the 100-year celebration of what is part of the American dream. What they described, come to this country legally. Let's help start a business. We've got to figure out how to make ends meet. So let's meet demands and help in our community. And then as that demand was met, they found other needs and they grew into a just and creating jobs. And this bill delivers for so many working families in America. If you just spent all of your days listening to the lies told by the Democrats, you would be living in a parallel universe, because they're rooting against the success of this bill, which means they're rooting against the success of working families across America. The good news is we, as House Republicans, focus on how to deliver wins for the families who have been struggling because of those failed Democrat policies, because of what the far left has done to increase inflation, increase interest rates, make it harder for the waiter or waitress to get by working 2 shifts at a diner. Well, now they don't have to pay tax on tips. And as Democrats are lying about billionaires, what they actually did was vote against those waiters and waitresses. They voted against those shift workers at the Patty shipyard who are working overtime and are wondering how much time they're spending away from their family, and they have to pay so much in taxes. Well, now they won't anymore. They're going to have dollars more every year in their pockets to go and maybe take a family vacation, to put away for their college. For every Democrat, how are they going to reconcile that when they fan across America? And I know Akeem is taking this traveling roadshow around the country to try to keep lying about the bill. The problem is he is flying in the face of Americans who know how good this bill is going to be for them. As he's lying about billionaires, every senior citizen who gets a benefit from this bill is saying, wait a minute, why'd you vote against a $6,000 deduction for me? That's what every Democrat did. And so we're talking about the wins in this bill that a lot of people don't know about. We of course know about lower rates for everybody. Every Democrat voted to raise rates on everybody. I'm curious to see, as they're traveling around the country, will they answer the question, will Hakeem and all of his friends pay the higher tax rate that they voted to impose on every American family? They actually did that. They voted to raise every American's taxes. But now that the bill's passed, are they going to be hypocritical and take the lower rate? Or will they can actually send more money in? They believe in taking more of your money, but they can send in more of their money. Will they do that and pay that higher rate that they voted to impose on everybody? I think probably not, but it's a fair question to ask. But in the meantime, all of those families who are going to benefit, a air traffic control system, as Congressman Petronas just talked about. We saw that floppy disks are running airports like in LaGuardia. Floppy disk drives. I'm a computer science major. I learned in the 80s how to program a computer on floppy disks. We got rid of the floppy disks in the 90s. They're still running airports off of that old technology. And President they have the confidence that that air traffic control system at their airport will run off of modern 21st century technology, not 1980s technology. You think about school choice. First time ever the federal government passed a school choice bill to give families an option now. And it's available to every state. States have the ability to opt in. Gavin Newsom likes attacking people who go visit his state. He likes attacking the millions of people who leave his state because he's such a failed leader. I'm wondering, is Gavin Newsom going to stand in front of the schoolhouse steps and deny the ability for every low-income family in the state of California the ability to send their kid to the school of their choice if the local school is failing those kids? That's a dilemma now that people like Gavin Newsom will have to face. Will he bow to the teachers' unions and tell those low-income families, no, your kid's got to stay in a failing school, or will he take advantage of the great opportunity presented in this one big beautiful bill to allow those low-income families to send their kids to any school, to have the opportunity to seek the American dream like every kid in this country deserves? That's in this bill. President Trump's Golden Dome, so many other great things, but we're going to keep talking about it. We're going to pass great digital currency legislation this week to continue modernizing our laws to keep up with the technology of today. We're going to pass the DOD appropriations bill this week to make sure that our men and women in uniform at all those great military bases that are in Congressman Petronas and so many other districts will be able to have the ability to keep up, to keep recruiting, to keep being the best and brightest and strongest fighting force in the world. That's what we're going to do this week. We're going to keep delivering. We're going to keep fighting for those families who have been left behind for way too long. Those days are no longer. President Trump is in the White House. Republicans are running Congress. We're getting things done and we're delivering results for hardworking families. And the man who never allows failure, who has said, no, we are not going to accept, even when the numbers don't look right, we're going to figure out a way to get it done, and we got it done because we've got a strong, bold leader as our speaker, Mike Johnson.
Thanks, bud. Thank you all for being here. Thank this great leadership team. Thank you, Congressman Jimmy Petronas, who has represented Florida's Panhandle so well. So grateful to have the Patty family, Frank and Mandy, and we have a lot in common, actually. My grandfather's from Sicily as well. His name was Nunzio Messina, okay? They went a little further west in the Gulf. Yeah, okay, right. I could have been somebody. I could have been Vinny Messina. I got Mike Johnson instead. It's so boring. But anyway, I love my father's side of the family as well. But here we are. Grateful that you're here. You all are going to see us highlighting real hardworking Americans for the foreseeable future, because the One Big Beautiful Bill helps everybody. And you're going to hear their stories, and you're going to hear what it means to them and what it means to their employees in this case, what it means to the people who have really been struggling to pay the bills. The last 4 years was a disaster under the Biden-Harris Democrat big government socialist policies, and now we're getting back to American principles. America's back, and everybody's going to benefit from it. I want to talk to you about that a little bit, but just first, I mean, it's appropriate for us to note it was 1 year ago Sunday that on that field in Butler, Pennsylvania, that an assassin nearly took the life of President Trump. And we can't talk about it too much because it was a turning point in American history. It could have gone the wrong way. I mean, if that assassin's bullet missed just an inch to the right, or if President Trump would have turned his head just a millisecond later, he would have died on that stage, and this country would have come apart at the seams. But now, because of all this recent success and the president's success, it's easy to forget that just 12 months ago, President Trump was the most vilified politician, arguably, in the history of the country. Democrats spent years persecuting him on all fronts. They impeached him twice. Social media platforms removed his ability to communicate with his supporters. Armed FBI agents raided his home. Democrat judges and prosecutors bent the law to arrest him, and multiple assassins tried to kill him. But God miraculously spared the president's life. I think it's undeniable, and he did it for an obvious purpose. And his presidency and his life are the fruits of divine providence, and he points that out, obviously, now all the time, and he's right to do so. As President Trump has lived since, with the acknowledgement, every day since, he has acknowledged that each new day isn't guaranteed to us. It isn't to any of us, and that's why we're not wasting any time. It's why he remains so strong and resilient. It's why we have such a sense of urgency. President Trump took a bullet to his head. He got up shortly thereafter. He pleaded with the crowd to fight, and then he went on to win a historic election less than 4 months later. America's changed because he survived that day. Think about everything that we've been able to accomplish, and just over the last few weeks. I recounted this on the floor in the speech right after Hakeem finished his endless 8.5-hour, parade of lies. I said it takes a lot longer to build a lie than it does to tell the simple truth, and the truth is on our side. And as John Adams said, facts are stubborn things. We can't wait to talk about the facts, about the big, beautiful bill over this next year and a half or so till the election. But think about everything we've accomplished just the last few weeks. Gas prices hit a 4-year low. The last 4 jobs reports exceeded expectations. The stock market is reaching record highs. We have the lowest monthly border encounters in the history of the United States. Our NATO partners committed to spending 5%, not 2% of their GDP on national defense. We brokered multiple peace agreements and struck many more trade deals, more to come. Significantly damaged Iran's nuclear program, and on July 4th, we did sign the One Big Beautiful Bill. The President signed it into law. It's the most consequential, transformational legislation ever considered in our lifetimes, and we got it done because the Republican Party delivered on the promises we made to the American people. And the President did as well. That list that I just mentioned barely scratches the surface. President Trump has promised the most, and has delivered now, the most successful first 6 months of any president in the modern era, and many argue probably in the history of this great nation. And he's shown no signs of stopping. We won't. Every citizen in every zip code in every pocket of America will benefit from the Big Beautiful Bill. Just like the Patties explained, you'll hear story after story in the weeks ahead. Last week, my office sent a survey to our constituents. I serve Louisiana's 4th Congressional District, and we sent around a survey to Louisiana families, knowing that they're going to save thousands of dollars now because of the vote that we took on July 3rd. We asked them, how would you use the extra money? And here's some of the responses. James said he's going to use the savings to open a Roth IRA for his family. Janice is an 80-year-old widow. She said she's going to use the savings for much-needed repairs to her home. Whitney is in a retirement home. She's going to utilize the savings to help pay rent. Pamela is grateful for the increased standard deduction and will likely add these savings to a rainy day fund for future expenses. Another constituent named James said he doesn't even want the relief. He said he's going to spend his thousands. He'd like to send it back to us to, quote, use for more plane tickets for people heading back south of the border wall. Okay? All right? That's a real response. All right? So many of my constituents said they would use their savings on things like basic needs and bills and debt payment and transportation and home repairs and helping family members and adding to their emergency funds, or some of them taking a well-deserved vacation. You know what? As Jimmy said earlier, it's their money. It's not the government's money, and we're delighted to give it back to them. That's the beauty of the One Big Beautiful Bill, and you can spend it however you please. I know the stories are similar in the other 434 congressional districts across this country. Despite the Democrats' repeated lies about the bill, lower and middle income Americans are going to reap the greatest benefit. Individuals making less than $50,000 per year will receive the largest benefit from the tax cuts. Tipped and overtime workers will see no taxes on those wages. Take-home pay for the typical hardworking American family will increase by over $10,000 a year, and over 50 million seniors will now pay no taxes on their Social Security. This is real. The bill was written of, by, and for the American people. And with President Trump's signature on Independence Day, the American people will finally begin to feel relief. I'll just end with this statement and we'll take some questions. America First is no longer an agenda. It is now the law of the land. And that's what the people voted on last November to deliver, and we did it in less than half a year. So I'll take a few questions. Front row.
First of all, Speaker Benny Messina would have been great.
Hey.
So regarding yesterday's Supreme Court order on the Education Department, we've previously been asked whether Congress will assert its constitutional authority and pass legislation closing the department, which of course was created by an act of Congress. When exactly does that moment arrive? Does the President having, quote, ultimate authority over the Education Department, as was Secretary McMahon's interpretation of the order, not conflict with Congress's legal and constitutional power? At what point does this become a separation of powers conflict?
It may not surprise you. I haven't had a chance to digest the Supreme Court opinion from yesterday, whenever it was. Been a little busy, but we'll look into that. I'm a constitutional law attorney. I'm a jealous guardian of Article 1 authority, but I also know that for decades, the Department of Education, since its creation, the Department of Education wielded by the executive branch. I think that was the intent of Congress as I understood it back then. We have a large say in that, but we're going to coordinate that with the White House, where I'm not going to get as a vision on how to reform education at the federal level. Secretary McMahon has done an extraordinary job thus far, and we're going to follow their cues on how to do that. If we see that the separation of powers is being breached in some way, we'll act, but I haven't seen that yet. So, yeah.
Mr. Speaker, your office has told me the holdup on Congress taking up disaster aid for California is that you're waiting for the White House to send an official request. The President has indicated no interest in doing so, in part because of his tiff beef with Gavin Newsom, whatever you want to call it. Will you commit to including California in any disaster aid package passed out of the House, whether it be Texas, the Carolinas, regardless of the President's feelings about California?
Well, first of all, we wouldn't know how much to commit because there's a process that this goes through. The White House, in every administration and every previous Congress, the White House takes the request of the state. After the calculations have been done, the assessments, there's a multi-step process to this. They take that, they send the request to Congress, and then Congress it goes through regular order and acts upon the request. We just haven't had that in California yet for whatever reason. Gavin Newsom seems to enjoy trying to stick his thumb in the eye of the White House and the Congress, which seems to be counter-purpose if he is requesting relief. Look, we're going to do the right thing at the end of the day. We'll take care of the American people. We'll take care of our federal responsibilities. But we've not seen the calculation nor the formal request yet, and I'm going to act upon it until we do.
The formal request was sent to your office in February, sir.
I would get the request from the White House and the executive branch. That's how this works. We're going to follow the rules.
Mr. Speaker, what's the consternation among House Republicans about possible changes to the decisions bill in the Senate, and what that would be like in terms of timing as you're up against this deadline on Friday?
Yeah, the Friday deadline looms. We're encouraging our Senate partners over there to get the job done and to pass it as is. That's what we did. It reflects the intention and the view of the House. This in our view was low-hanging fruit. This rescission package is, you're talking about funding for USAID, the egregious abuses that the DOJ analysis and audits uncovered. We've got to claw that back. The American people, everybody demands that. We can't fund transgender operas in Peru with U.S. taxpayer dollars, right? So come on. The NPR and PBS components this is, in our view, the misuse of taxpayer dollars. They're biased reporting. They're not objective. They pretend to be so. They have for a long time. And the people don't need to fund that. I mean, we're in an age of, you all know, you work in the industry. I mean, media is so multifaceted now. There's so many avenues and areas for information. And while at its origination, NPR and PBS might have made some sense, And maybe it does now, but it shouldn't be subsidized by taxpayers. So these are simple questions to answer for us. The House has acted appropriately, and I hope the Senate will do the same. I've urged them, as I always do, to please keep the product unamended, because we have a narrow margin and we got to pass it. But we're going to process whatever they send us whenever they send us, and I'm hopeful that it'll be soon.
What's this say about the mission if you're unable, though, to pass those things? So, I mean, the idea that, Republicans talk about cutting the spending, and if there's a conflict, then you can't get it done through that deadline?
I don't accept defeat, Chad, so we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Homeland Security Committee Chair Mark Green will be leaving on the 20th. Have you talked to any of the contenders and who can succeed him? How much do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I've talked to all of them, and we have an embarrassment of riches in the House Republican Conference. We have very highly qualified people who are willing to step up. They're all highly respected among their peers, so it'll be quite a horse race there. And I'm not going to put my thumb on the scale and try to influence that one way or the other. We have a process here. We respect the process, and that we have a steering committee that's composed of leaders and representatives from across the conference, and they'll hear the presentations of the candidates, and then they'll make the due decision. But it's going to be a tough race because there's some tough people. Great men who step forward, and we'll see how it shakes out. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Let me
Come see y'all in person.
Yeah.
give this to you, Jim. Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Is that good?
All right, so obviously the clock is tight. So the deadline is we have to have it done before we leave.
Meatball.
We can send it changes. We don't know what that would be. We've heard obviously. Thank you guys. Great job, Jimmy.
Thank you, sir.
Great to hear the success of the One Big Beautiful Act signed into law by President Trump on the 4th of July, with House GOP leadership holding that briefing. And Jimmy Petronas, one of the newest congressmen in Florida's 1st congressional district, speaking on the benefits of the workforce, and the gentleman, one of his constituents, working in the Gulf of America, bringing some of the best fish in the world. That district, the northwest corner of Florida, in the Panhandle, Pensacola, being one of the larger areas there. That's a former seat of Matt Gaetz. So Jimmy Petronas working hard, as he mentioned, 36 years in the restaurant industry. And House Speaker Mike Johnson sharing in the constituents' Sicilian ancestry, which is very fun because I have a little bit of Sicilian in me as well. So that was a fun little moment that I did not know about the House Speaker. But then also going into some serious matters, reflecting on 1 year ago, how this nation could have been very different and in turmoil if the assassin was successful against President Trump. And look what he has been through, this president, this movement of investigations and Russia, crossfire hurricane, assassination attempts, fake impeachments, the FBI raiding Mar-a-Lago. It's been an amazing course of a few years, and we all get to be part of it on the front row of history, and this movement getting stronger by the day to bring much-needed tax relief to the American people. And as House Speaker Mike Johnson said, as well as Leader Scalise, House Whip Emmer, and Conference Leader McClain, this Republican conference will continue to move forward, along with the president's agenda and the success of the SCOTUS ruling that the Department of Education can now be reformed and sent back to the states. So we'll see the Secretary Linda McMahon getting on that right away, as she has been over the course of the last 6 months. Thank you to our great sponsors, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. They have the code RSBN10, a new deal out there for you today. 10% off NAD+, methylene blue, ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, and much, much more. Mebendazole as well. Life-saving medications for bacterial and viral infections, cancers as well. So very smart to have in the medicine cabinet. Scan that QR code now. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. 10% off with code RSBN10. Kalshi.com/RSBN. Will Elon Musk start a third party? Will President Trump continue with pardons? And who will he pardon? Also, who will win the Major League Baseball All-Star Game tonight? The Midsummer classic for you in Atlanta, Georgia, live tonight at Truist Park. I hope you get to enjoy with family and friends. Scan that QR code there, kalshi.com/RSBN. Trade on anything, all the big bets in America. Also, angelpaste.com, the miracle that is out of Spring, Texas, in Lone Star State, off of the Gulf of America. Amazing products, including their Miracle Cream, an all-natural mosquito spray, facial spray as well to paint the town red. So experience this Christian-owned veteran hiring company out of Spring, Texas, angelpaste.com. And also going back up to Minnesota, Tom Emmer's 6th Congressional District, not far from there, is Mr. Mike Lindell's MyPillow, and mypillow.com/RSBN. The free shipping sale, the MyCross, save 50% now. Also, MyPillow bed sheets going for as low as $24.98. The multi-use MyPillow 2.0 going for $9.98. All different kinds. It's better than a lunch deal. So call today. Don't delay. 800-836-7566. Support Mike Lindell and RSBN with code RSBN. Very easy to remember. MyPillow.com/RSBN. Two entities fighting for you, for freedom of speech, election integrity, and the best products in all of the land. With over 2,000 products at MyPillow.com/RSBN. Can help you with your nights and your mornings getting a good sleep and a great start to your day. Thank you to Mike Lindell. And thank you to all our sponsors on Right Side Broadcasting Network's live desk. And later today, stay tuned for all the action on this beautiful Tuesday, 1 year from the Republican National Convention that was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And it's amazing to go through social media and see where some colleagues and friends were just 1 year ago today, with people like Pete Hegseth doing interviews, now the Secretary of Defense, to the former senator from Ohio, J.D. Vance, being nominated to become the Vice President of the United States. And thanks be to God, President Trump remained with us after a terrible event in Butler, Pennsylvania, an attempted assassination, but God had other plans for this great leader and this great movement. But stay tuned today for a 1:30 broadcast start time, a DOJ and a DEA announcement on actions to combat drug cartels and drug trafficking. So that's the Department of Justice in coordination with the Drug Enforcement Agency. Stay tuned for that, as well as a Trump roundtable beginning at 3 o'clock. All of that coverage with Matthew Alvarez this afternoon. So be sure to tune in to Right Side Broadcasting Network as we catch a live shot there in Washington, D.C. of the People's House at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House. So again, come back for all the coverage at 1:30 and have a wonderful rest of your morning as we near 11 o'clock on the East Coast, 8 o'clock on the West Coast. A very good morning to you, America. I'm Robert McNeely. For all of my colleagues here at RSBN, have a wonderful morning. We'll see you in a few moments, and have a blessed day.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
To celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7, I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.